Hello, you lovely listeners. I'm Amy. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast, where we will delve into the minds of the business people we have met in the process of launching our first card game. We will be uncovering their secrets to success, their biggest mistakes, and sharing the key lessons they have picked up en route. So, if you're looking for an engaging chinwag mixed with business insights and a good pinch of fun, you're in the right place. Let's have a really good conversation. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast. Today's guest is a very, very special lady who I have a lot of admiration for, of what she has been achieving in her life and career. Michaela Reaney, co-founder of the Opportunity Global. Michaela is passionate about human skills, behavioural change and equality. She's currently organising TEDxTeessideWomen, which will take place on the 16th of November in Middlesbrough. And she's flying the flag for women in Teesside area. So welcome, Michaela.
Hello, thank you for having me. What a fabulous intro. Can you do that for all of my events, please?
I did have to think of how I could say it in the most succinct way, because there is so much that I could say about you and all of the amazing things that you do and have been up to. And also the fact that, you know, we have actually been friends for, over 34 years.
I know. Please don't say that. It ages us terribly. Everyone will be busy trying to work out how old that makes us.
I know, exactly. And I'm starting to think now, it's amazing, though, at the same time that, you know, I'm actually now being able to invite friends on this podcast. So it's now sort of now going to end up just becoming a me chatting with my mates.
But it's a way to spend your time, though. That's not a bad thing.
Exactly, but you know what we're like, we will have to keep ourselves on rails. But tell us a little bit for our listeners about the Opportunity Global.
Yes, so the big thing that we focus on is helping organizations, so corporates, smaller SMEs, bigger SMEs. We help them unlock the potential of the people in their team. And we do that through learning and development. So the big area that we focus on is human skills. So we've basically banned the word soft skills from the workplace. So the reason for that is because I think it undermines and it underestimates actually how important these skills are. And one of the big things that we're helping people with at the moment is around having more open and honest conversations in the workplace. So that's why it beautifully aligns with the work that you guys are doing to actually help people have more conversations. Because I think in this world that we're now in, with like hybrid working, with people working from home, there's more barriers in place for people. So I think we all need to work harder at those really good human skills like communication and having good quality conversations.
That's fantastic. And that is exactly why I was keen to bring you on this podcast to chat about. And we know there's a lot of different areas that we could talk about in your work, but really that communication, conversations in the workplace is really, a key area. And what is it that you've seen with your clients and the work that you do?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we've seen at the moment is organizations saying they're having issues around productivity, efficiency, well-being, all things like this. And I think a lot of organizations go straight to the big, expensive, not always expensive, but quite often expensive programs of activity, you know, tick box stuff like bringing in a well-being program, investing in some perks or extra benefits for their team, which are great in one place. But I think sometimes we forget the simple, really basic things of, are your teams actually communicating effectively? Are they having the conversations that they need to have? Or are some people actually avoiding those conversations that might feel a little bit uncomfortable, or maybe they're feeling are going to be a bit more difficult? And so that's actually stopping, for example, a project being successful because they're not giving people feedback. They're just dealing with the situation, maybe taking on more work, getting overwhelmed, getting stressed because they haven't actually had the conversation with the person in the team that they need to give them some feedback about, their performance or the quality of work or whatever it might be. So I really want to change the workplace one conversation at a time. That's my big mission. And I think the way that we do that is by really digging deep into these human skills. So, what do we need now from contributors in the workplace, from leaders? We need more conscious leadership. We need more people having open, honest conversations about the good things that are going on, but also the things that maybe aren't quite working and the things we need to fix. I think for too long, we've all been in a world where we're kind of heads down, get your work done, need to hit deadlines, and actually we forget some of the important things around that make it successful. And I think that's that interaction with each other in a team.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, we all know from, my previous careers of, you do want to perhaps have that conversation with someone, and even whether it might be about performance or salary raises or things like that. And there's always that awkward, as soon as you schedule a meeting with that, perhaps your manager or something, there's then that, you're dreading it, thinking, and then they know there's something that you want to talk to, and you can fall into building this whole thing up in your head. And actually, again, once you're in the room with the person, majority of the time, well, it's absolutely fine and you're on the same page and they're there to listen. But I think, there's something obviously about perhaps being in the workplace, you're feeling we've got to remain professional at all times. And therefore you can't bring up certain things.
Yeah, or even show that human side, right? Like, I think in the current economy, money is a big issue. We know that, mental health issues are increasing rapidly. Mental health related to money worries and money stress is happening. And the problem is, people don't talk about money in the workplace, right? It's quite a taboo subject. People find it hard, as you say, to, have salary negotiations, to talk about, career progression, things like that. But we also don't talk about, like, what do we do if you're in work, but actually you're struggling still to pay your bills? Like, that impact on your productivity is phenomenal. The impact on the quality of work that you'll be able to deliver is massive. But we don't have those conversations at work. We keep it all to, maybe worrying about ourselves. And so therefore, when you are showing up with work, you're not able to do your best possible work or show up and, and thrive, because you've got all this baggage that you're holding on to and all of this stress that you're bringing into those conversations as well. So I think there's a responsibility on leaders to start creating these more safe spaces for people to have those open conversations. And I think in turn, feel good in the workplace. I don't believe a leader should take responsibility for making people happy, because for me personally, I think happiness is so multifaceted. Like, you set yourself up for fail. The conversation bit is something we can all do better.
Yeah, I think also what can be very challenging for organisations in the remote working space, that now, you're scheduling the calls for team meetings, etc. And it's very much you jump on the call and it's getting down to business straight away. And I think with video, it's those nuances of, at what point, the next person can speak or interrupt, or, the body language you don't get to see. So often I think people are struggling to perhaps where are opportunities to have these perhaps human conversations, because they're expected to jump on a video call, have the team meeting, everyone be efficient and jump off.
Yeah. And also then there's no gap in between, because people are like overbooking their diaries and they're on back-to-back calls, back-to-back meetings. So there is no space even to prepare yourself for the conversation. Like, one of my kind of top simple tips for people is, make sure you actually prepare. If there's a conversation that you're feeling a bit uncomfortable about or you're potentially avoiding, like, make sure you spend some time actually preparing for that. Set yourself up for success, reflect a little bit on what is the goal that you're trying to achieve, what's the outcome that you actually want from the conversation, because immediately that will help you put aside any of your assumptions that you're making about how the conversation's going to go. Or, we all do it, don't we, where we like overthink it and we're like, we're playing out the conversation in our head. And all of that is our mindset kind of running away with ourselves, when in reality, none of those things may even happen. But it means we're going into the conversation like already feeling anxious, already feeling stressed. And that has a massive impact on like your body as well as your mind. So it's trying to break that down as well for people and just have some simple guidance on how to approach these conversations, because it could be as simple as giving your teammate feedback, or even taking feedback, like receiving feedback. How do you do that really well? No one really teaches you any of this stuff in school, in university, and then we're thrown in the workplace and we don't have the skills to deal with it.
And that element of what could be feedback that's, you might take it personally, where it is just constructive and it is just, we're all working in this project together, rather than people taking that home and really feeling it's been a target on them. But that, I think, also comes back to the delivery of that person giving the feedback,
Definitely.
as well as. So you mentioned a quick tip there for people, but what's the sort of, I guess, tips and advice that you are giving to some of the organizations that, business leaders, from your learnings and insights?
Yeah, I mean, again, none of this is hugely difficult to do. It's just actually taking the time to do it properly. So a little bit like you're saying, if you're running from one meeting to a next, you don't really have the space to do that. So I think one of the big things is make sure that if you are going into a conversation that you're feeling a bit uncomfortable about, whether you are a leader or a contributor in an organization, is actually just have a few notes written down, like bullet points, but make sure you've got enough flexibility in there that you can go and adapt to how the conversation flows as well. You don't want it to be so scripted that you're not then able to have a natural conversation with someone. And I think the other big thing is like choosing the right time to have the conversation. So don't have the conversation when you already, recognize that someone's emotions might be heightened, or there's distractions there, or there's levels of stress that are going on. Make sure that you've got some space to do it properly, and that it's scheduled, that it's a private conversation if it needs to be, and, all of those different things. Don't do it at the start of a meeting before other people join, or just little things like that can make simple changes. And I think the other big thing is, when you're actually in the conversation, making sure that you use I statements, so you can express your perspective but without putting blame on the other person. So a little bit like you just mentioned there, if you're giving feedback to someone, don't keep saying you did this and because that sounds, it sounds a little bit more aggressive in the way you say it, but it's also immediately making assumptions or putting blame on the other person. Whereas what you want to do is be two people, working on a problem together. It's not about trying to win in the conversation. You've got to be in the conversation to try and understand and to try and solve that problem together. So I think it's making sure that you listen properly, so that you're listening to actually understand, not just to respond. We've all been in situations like that, I'm sure, haven't we, before, where the other person's just jumping in immediately. They're not really listening to you. Yeah. And immediately that makes you feel uncomfortable. It makes you a bit more defensive. And all of those things don't actually make for a good, positive conversation. Whereas if you listen really actively and then actually play back what you're hearing to the other person, so that you're being really clear on, have you actually understood what they're trying to say? Because normal human behavior is, we hear one thing, we'd latch on to that one thing in the conversation, and then sometimes it's hard to actually listen to the rest of it. So it's just making sure that, have I actually understood what that person's trying to tell me? And then ask some questions to clarify, so that you make sure you're leaving the conversation with the right information.
Yeah, and that's a good highlight that you've even said there about, making sure the person is actually trying to understand your point and actually asking questions. Because I think, unfortunately, the reality is some people are difficult to have a conversation with, and particularly in the workplace, if they're a bit intimidating, and you've done the preparation, you've gone to them, but quite frankly, this person is still a bit of an arse, that, you know, they're not really listening to you, and it's a bit, you know, their way or the highway. Do you have any thoughts around how somebody could deal with that if the person is really quite a bit of a difficult character?
Yeah, I think again, you know, sometimes it's about how you set the conversation up. So again, making sure you find a time where that person's maybe a little bit more approachable. And I don't think there's any harm in saying, you know, being really honest, like, I feel a bit uncomfortable having this conversation, because immediately the more you open up, the other person's defenses come down, because, you know, they then, you know, there's very few people, I believe, that would, if you were really open and honest and said, look, I feel a bit uncomfortable having this conversation, but it's really important to me, and I'd really like to be able to explain and just express some of the things that are going on for me. That's a totally different way to starting a conversation than going in with someone who is maybe a bit combative, and, you know, it ends up being more conflict. I think the other thing is always, like, try and put yourself in the other person's shoes. So even if they are a bit of an arse, try and think from their perspective, like, maybe what's causing that. So all of us at any point in time are just operating from a place of what resources we have available to us, right? So every decision we make, every conversation we go into, we're doing it from a place of, okay, this is my, you know, headspace I'm in right now. These are the resources that I have available. So I do think we all have to go into conversations believing that, you know, fundamentally people are good people. It just might be that person's got other stresses going on, other things that we're not aware of. So maybe by opening up and saying, look, I'm a bit uncomfortable having this conversation, it just starts to break down some of those barriers that might be there.
Yeah, that is the reality, is having empathy. And there is other things going on in people's lives outside of work and business that, you know, you're not exposed to. And it's kind of, always giving people, shall we say, the benefit of the doubt, and having compassion.
Definitely. And I think overall, like, we all just, in the world generally, not just in the workplace, we need more empathetic leadership, don't we? We need more people, you know, putting themselves in other people's perspectives, you know, not giving sympathy, because I don't think always sympathy is the right thing. But I think having empathy and trying to understand another person's perspective, gosh, that could like save a lot of issues in the world, couldn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing those insights on that topic, because I think it is really, you know, an important one. And I think, you know, if we all think from our early careers, that it wasn't really considered now. And I think it is something that's becoming more and more prevalent for people. So, as you know, what I like to do with all of our guests is to ask some questions from our Really Good Conversation.
How exciting.
So I'll be putting you on the spot a bit here. So question number 1, who has had the biggest influence on your life?
Oh, gosh, that's a really tricky one, isn't it? It's hard to just pinpoint one person. I think probably overall, the person that's had one of the biggest impacts on my life is actually my auntie. So my auntie Sue, because she's an entrepreneur as well. So she started her business, I think, over 40 years ago, and it's still running now. So she's a chef, but then set up her own restaurant. And I think what that's really always like influenced me on or shown me is just how it is possible to literally start from scratch with something and build a business that is family sustaining, like something that can grow over time, that you can keep building. And I think it just shows that, like, those really kind of early memories of like being in her restaurant or helping, like, it does influence your excitement around being an entrepreneur and having your own goals and having your own kind of control over building something of your own, I think is really nice.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been to your auntie's restaurant.
Yeah.
Considering I've known you all this time. I have to go.
It's probably because it's in the Midlands, so it's a bit far away.
Oh, yeah. A little bit hard to get to. Question number 2. If you came with a warning label, what would it say?
Oh, I think it would definitely say, please remember to feed her, because if she gets hangry, you don't want to be around her.
Brilliant. I definitely suffer from the hangry symptoms.
It's like the worst, isn't it? I literally turned into a different person.
I know over the
Proper
years,
Hulk moment.
Alex over the years will be like, it'll be mid-morning or something, and it's like, have you eaten yet today? And I'm like, no, I haven't eaten. And he's like, do you think, no, I'm fine? Okay, and question number 3. What is something that not many people know about you?
Ooh. Well, it was something I've only discovered these last couple of weeks that I thought everyone knew, but quite a lot of people don't seem to know that I have goats. And that I'm like a goat herder by night. So yes, so I've got 4 goats, as you know about this, but not many people seem to. I was really surprised. Loads of people. I put a post on Instagram a few days ago of the goats, and loads of people messaged me being like, oh my gosh, you've got goats. How did I not know this? So yeah, I didn't realize. I thought everyone knew that. So yes, I've got a goat herding license and we have livestock. So yes, that's fun.
And have you got any plans to be adding more to the livestock brood anytime soon?
I would love to, but my other half is not so keen. So I think we need to wait a little bit longer. But yeah, eventually I would definitely like some more goats. And I also have always wanted to rescue donkeys. But the challenge with donkeys is you can't really live in a village. I don't think our neighbours would particularly like it because they're very noisy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's the problem. But eventually I'd love to just have loads of animals, rescue loads of animals, and just have them all wandering around.
Oh, I love that. We'll watch this space then.
I know.
And the final question that I ask all of our guests who join us is, if you could ask any person, dead or alive, a question, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Ooh, okay. So I would choose, the person I'd choose, I think, is Mel Robbins. So Mel Robbins, I'm a big fan of her work. So she is like a motivational speaker, coach, podcaster. And I love her work. I love her books and everything that she does. I'm a bit of a super fan. I'd love to meet her one day. So if you're listening, Mel, I would love to meet you and be on your podcast one day. But the reason I'd like to ask her a question is because she does all this amazing work in the world, and she's got all these books, and she's doing so much work around like mindset and, you know, how we all can create better lives for ourselves and all of this stuff. So my question for Mel would be, what conversation is she currently avoiding in her life or in her workplace? And what is that conversation that she knows she needs to have, but she hasn't yet had?
Oh, love that. And I think all of us, you know, obviously you've been talking about this topic, you know, yourself, about, you know, these questions that are being avoided, you know, on your LinkedIn and through, you know, some of the webinars and such that you've been doing. And it does make you think, you know, it is a little bit of a holding up the mirror. When we, you know, and it's a little bit, it does make you feel a little bit awkward to think, oh, actually, well, yeah, that person or that person in personal life, you know, and professional. Yeah. So
I think really that's so true, Amy, because it's not always the big stuff, is it? I think sometimes it's just the small little things that we might be avoiding. Because I think the word avoidance makes it sound like more like bigger than it is, when it might just be simple things that, you know, you haven't rang the bank about something that you need to do. You're putting it off, you know, and why are you putting it off? Like it just makes you think, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah. And also I think with people, friends and family, there might be something, oh, I've been meaning to ask so how that went. But again, you think, oh, I'll ask them next time I see them. Or then you're with other people and you think, oh, I'm not going to ask them now because, you know, we're now with a number of people as well. So then you feel actually you never actually then end up asking the question or finding out as well. It was actually very interesting. Just the other night with Alex's parents, that he actually said that he'd been considering questions he wished he'd asked his parents as well. And I said, well, that is really obviously one of the whole reasons we started this game in the first reason. But it got him thinking about further his own families and stuff that he doesn't know, because again, he just didn't either ask the questions or have the conversations at all. So how can people find out more about the Opportunity Global, TEDxTeessideWomen and yourself?
Yeah, so I think one of the easiest ways is through socials. So following me on Instagram or on LinkedIn, and I guess we can put the handles in the show notes for people to find those.
Thank you for sharing that, and we'll include those links there. So thank you so much for your time today. As I said, we could talk about lots of different topics. So we really we've honed in, we've remained focused on this particular conversation in the workplace. But yeah, really thank you for your insights, and also wishing you all the best for 2 weeks' time for the TEDxTeessideWomen live event as well.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information on today's guests. And if really good conversations are your thing, hit subscribe and join us next time for more business journeys, insights and banter.